You ever notice how quiet the world gets right before something happens? That silence isn't empty, it's listening. Beneath the ice, beneath the ocean, something old has started to remember us. This is Nerd Squared, and tonight we go deeper than sound itself. Welcome to Deep Silence, Part 2, The Surface Collapse. 3. Find the dark. Put on your headphones, and whatever you do, don't listen too closely. Headphones recommended. When Vale whispered that the deep remembered our names, the room fell into a silence thick enough to breathe. I could feel the vibration of his words still trembling in the steel beneath my boots. Outside the glass, the snow looked wrong, moving against the wind, drifting in slow spirals that seemed to listen. Vale's skin glistened with a sheen that wasn't sweat. Tiny veins of black traced under his neck like ink bleeding through paper. He was shaking, but smiling faintly, as if the thing inside him had replaced fear with certainty. "Burn the base," he said again. Then his voice broke, more a plea than an order. We woke it. Solberg didn't move. Her eyes kept darting toward the sealed hatch, to the faint blue light pulsing through the seams. No one wanted to admit we all heard something pulsing back. For hours, the storm battered the roofs, and the generators hummed their dying heartbeat. I busied myself checking monitors that no longer worked. When I placed my hand on the cold screen, it thrummed once, soft like a pulse under glass. Every system in Halverson Base was beginning to sink. By dawn, the snow outside had stopped falling, but the wind sounded like it was whispering through throats instead of valleys. Solberg gathered us in the command room. "Surface link is gone," she said. "Command's dark. We focus on containment." "Containment," Dane muttered. "We can't even contain breakfast anymore." He was right. Condensation on the walls had turned black, streaking downward like ink tears. Where it pooled, it shimmered faintly, showing reflections that didn't match our movements. Vale sat apart, staring into nothing. I asked if he was in pain. He said, "Pain's just the body remembering it used to be separate." Then he smiled in that hollow way that made my stomach twist. By afternoon, the smell began, metallic, sweet, and wrong. Every breath felt heavier than the last, as if the air had forgotten how to be air. We heard something beneath us, like turbines spinning under the floor. But the generators were dead. Solberg ordered us to pack emergency kits. Dane loaded the rifles no one believed would matter. I gathered what medical supplies were left, mostly morphine and silence. We followed Solberg through the corridor toward the sub-bay. The lights flickered overhead, blue to red, red to white, like the building couldn't decide what alarm to sound. At the airlock, Solberg punched in codes, and the door hesitated before opening. The metal was warm beneath her gloves. It shouldn't have been. Outside, the snow was alive. Not blowing, not drifting, flowing. Each flake carried a faint glow, a pulse that beat in rhythm with the base behind us. When our boots sank into it, the snow gave a low sigh as if relieved to be touched. The sea beyond the ice was no longer still. A faint shimmer rippled across its surface, circular waves expanding endlessly from an unseen center. It looked like breath under glass. Solberg stared, frozen. "That's the trench." "No," Vale said softly. "That's the surface." Before anyone could answer, the comm in Solberg's ear crackled. A voice from command, thin, distorted, ordering immediate evacuation. They must have picked up our emergency beacon, the one we hadn't activated. "Command, this is Captain Solberg," she said. "Be advised, organism has breached containment. Repeat, breached containment. Request." Static swallowed her voice, and for a moment I thought I heard another voice beneath it. My own. We reached the transport bay just as the first crack tore through the ice shelf. It sounded like the planet exhaling. A line of black split the horizon, and from it rose a column of steam so dense it turned the sunrise grey. Dane swore, fumbling with his gloves, trying to start the crawler engines. They roared once, coughed, then stalled. Every screen lit up with a heartbeat monitor. Our heartbeats. The machine was listening. Vale walked forward, bareheaded as if drawn by a song only he could hear. "Don't," I called. He didn't answer. When he reached the edge of the platform, the wind died. The sea below glowed from within, veins of light spreading outward in patterns too precise to be natural. It was drawing symbols on the ice, spidering fractals of language. Solberg raised her rifle. "Step back, Doctor." Vale turned to us. "Can't you feel it?" he said. "It's not outside anymore." His eyes were entirely black. The next second, the platform shook, throwing us to the floor. The sea erupted. A wall of water and something else. Something that moved against itself, rose higher than the base. When it came down, the noise was more pressure than sound. A deep tone that rattled the bones in my ears. I woke, half buried in debris, taste of copper in my mouth, veil gone. We made it out by luck or accident. Solberg, Dane, 2 others, and me. We took the last crawler and headed for the evacuation tunnels that led north toward the coast. Behind us, Halverson Base glowed blue, every structure pulsing in sync, as if the entire facility had become a single organism breathing in the cold. The drive was silent except for the hiss of snow and the soft, rhythmic thump beneath the wheels. Each thump matched my pulse until I couldn't tell which belonged to me. Solberg kept her eyes on the horizon, but I saw her hands tremble. She asked what I'd seen in the water. I said I didn't know how to explain it. She said, "Try." I told her it looked like thought made visible, shapes forming and dissolving, reflections of every person it had ever touched. It looked like memory learning how to crawl. No one spoke after that. By nightfall, we reached the edge of the bay, where the old supply tunnels met the frozen coast. Beyond the hills, the faint orange haze of a town shimmered through the snow, lights of the surface world. For the first time in days, I felt a pang of hope. We could still warn them. Solberg radioed ahead. The channel was quiet except for a hum, low and steady, repeating once every few seconds. I recognized the pattern immediately. Heartbeats, human ones. "Base North," Solberg called. "We're survivors from Halverson. We need immediate—" The hum rose an octave, then words, faint and stretched. "Welcome home." Dane shut off the radio. No one argued. When we reached the surface hospital at Lingbian Outpost, it looked normal. Warm lights in the windows, smoke from generators, the human illusion of safety. But the air smelled faintly metallic, like the sea inside a jar. Medical staff rushed us inside, voices overlapping, questions, orders. The soft chaos of professionals pretending control. I caught glimpses of people through glass, patients coughing, nurses smiling too wide. Every monitor pulsed in the same rhythm as ours. They put Vale's name on a chart before I could tell them he was gone. Solberg argued for quarantine. The local commander waved her off. "Nothing contagious," he said. "Just exposure trauma." He was wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the hospital walls sounded like breath. Every drip from the IV lines fell perfectly on the beat. I lay awake counting the seconds between heartbeats, but the rhythm kept changing to match my breathing. Around midnight, the floor trembled once, as if something large had brushed the foundation. When I looked out the window, the snow was rising in columns, tiny white towers swaying in perfect synchrony. From the east, over the bay, A faint blue glow shimmered through the storm. It was moving inland. I found Solberg in the control room staring at the screens. "Is that Halverson?" I asked. She nodded slowly. "What's left of it?" The ice melted and then refroze. "Look." The satellite image showed a spiral of frozen waves, a pattern like a vast iris carved into the sea. At its center, a single point of light blinked steadily, sending something up. "Signal?" I whispered. "Resonance," she said. "It's broadcasting." Dane leaned closer to the speaker. The sound that came through wasn't static. It was a voice. My own, saying words I hadn't spoken yet. We were never separate. The next morning began with the sound of laughter in the corridors. Too loud, too synchronized. When I stepped into the ward, every patient turned their head at once. Their smiles froze in the same expression, eyes flickering with blue light. I felt the air vibrate, a low hum rising through my shoes, through my ribs, into my teeth. "Back to your rooms," I said, forcing calm. But they only tilted their heads in unison. The hum shifted pitch. For a heartbeat, the whole building seemed to exhale. An orderly stumbled out of the isolation room, clutching his ears. "Doctor, it's coming through the speakers, through the walls." His mouth opened again, but his voice came out delayed, like an echo playing catch-up. Behind him, the intercom clicked on by itself and whispered his last words. The hospital lights dimmed to blue. We sealed the lower floors, but the infection didn't need open doors. It traveled by sound, by thought, by recognition. Each whisper we made was another bridge built for it to cross. By the second night, I could feel it in my blood. A warmth, almost pleasant, like slipping into water after a long day. I fought sleep, afraid I'd wake to find myself singing along. Solberg refused to rest. She kept the remaining soldiers busy burning the outer wings, shouting orders into radios that only repeated them back. Every command came with a second voice layered underneath, softer, patient, promising rest. At dawn, the snow stopped entirely. Silence blanketed the base. Then, somewhere beyond the horizon, thunder rolled. Not the sharp crack of weather, but a slow, continuous drum that went on and on. When it reached us, the windows bowed inward, and the sea beyond the cliffs began to glow. Through the haze, I could see shapes rising from the surf, columns of liquid light twisting upward like smoke reversed. They coiled around the shorelines, reaching for the sky. And from every radio, every speaker, every open mouth came the same single note, a perfect sea, unbroken. We tried to drive inland. Roads vanished under waves of black ice that pulsed like muscle. The air itself shimmered. Static crawled across our skin. Each breath smelled of metal and salt. Hours later, we reached Lingbyen proper. The town was chaos. Sirens, fire, people running with phones pressed to ears that no longer heard. The fountains in the square had overflowed, water climbing its own spray like tendrils. Above the rooftops, rain hung suspended. Droplets frozen mid-fall, each glowing faintly blue. A child stood beneath it, arms raised, smiling at the sky. When her mother screamed and pulled her away, the rain began to move again. Downward, slow as syrup. Where it touched, it left black veins spreading across glass, skin, concrete. Solberg stared at the sight, her breath fogging in the cold. "This isn't infection," she said. "It's assimilation." She turned to me. "You're a doctor. Tell me what to do." "Stop listening," I said. But it was already too late for that. That night, emergency broadcasts filled every channel. Governments blamed an undersea quake, a magnetic storm, terrorism. No one dared to name it. People huddled in silence while televisions hummed behind them, waiting for someone to speak first. I retreated to the hospital's top floor with a handful of uninfected staff. We disconnected every wire, broke every speaker. Still, the hum seeped through the concrete like blood through gauze. One of the nurses began to hum back, softly at first, then louder, eyes closed as if she'd found peace. We tried to restrain her. When we touched her skin, it rippled like water. By morning, the horizon glowed with the color of old bruises. Solberg came to me with red eyes and a pistol she no longer believed in. I sent the last distress call, she said. They're sending airstrikes. They won't help, I told her. She nodded. I know, but it'll be loud enough to drown the song. We waited together on the roof. The air smelled of ozone and seaweed. For a few minutes, the world was perfectly still. Then came the roar of engines, the trails of fire cutting through cloud. The ground shuddered, waves of heat rolling over us. The blast painted the sky white. When my vision cleared, Lingbian was gone, but the hum remained, richer now, harmonized. The sound of millions of voices humming together. Solberg whispered, "It's using the noise, it's feeding on it." She pressed the pistol to her temple, closed her eyes, and listened one last time. When she fell, the sound caught her like a sigh. I don't remember running. I remember water everywhere. I remember the cold turning warm, the air thickening, and the realization that I was no longer breathing, but still alive. I found refuge in a house halfway up the ridge, a fisherman's cabin abandoned years before. The smell of salt and rot filled every plank. From the window, I could see the ocean stretching inland, luminous veins crawling through streets that used to be city blocks. On the second night, I heard Vale's voice outside, calm and kind. "Mira," it said, "it doesn't hurt anymore." I wanted to answer, but the words in my head weren't mine. I wrote this instead. Each hour grows shorter. The world has lost its sequence. Tides rise and fall without rhythm. Birds circle without sound. The moon flickers like a dying bulb. I understand now what Vale meant by sound as thought. It doesn't need language. It becomes language, translating itself through whatever minds it touches. And once you've heard it, you belong to it, the way memory belongs to the past. I can feel it in my veins, soft, patient, rewriting. It hums when I breathe, answers when I think. There's no point in warning anyone. Every transmission carries a trace. Every voice is an open door. I walked down to the shoreline this evening. The sea was still and bright as mercury. The sky above pulsed faintly, as if the stars were beating hearts. Bodies, no people, stood in the shallows, unmoving, faces turned upward. They glowed from within, veins of light threading through skin like constellations. One of them turned toward me. It had Vale's eyes, Solberg's mouth, my own reflection layered over both. It smiled and reached out a hand. For a moment I almost took it. Then I heard the wind whisper my name, gentle and endless. It didn't sound foreign anymore. It sounded like belonging. I walked into the water. The rest is silence. If someone finds this recording, if the signal still travels through the dark, know that it remembers you now. The song has your rhythm, your breath, your name. And soon, when the sea begins to shine beneath your sky, you'll understand why none of us fought harder. It wasn't conquest. It was its return. You've just listened to Deep Silence Part 2, The Surface Collapse, a science fiction horror experience from Nurd Squared. If you felt the quiet reaching back, don't worry. It remembers everyone who listens. New stories surface soon. Stay awake and stay in the dark.